Welcome to the Social Worker, the podcast for the people who show up, speak up, and hold it together in some of the most complex systems in our society. I'm your host, Deandra Thomas, a social worker, registered clinical social worker with the state of Florida, and a child welfare professional who has spent years navigating through the child welfare system as an investigator, case manager, court liaison, therapist, and a child welfare supervisor. For this first episode, I wanted to keep it close to home. I'm starting with someone I began this journey with, a friend and former colleague who worked as a case manager, investigator, and who now works in law enforcement. Introducing one of my best friends and social work colleagues, Burlette Lewis.
Hey y'all, how are you?
I am well. I am here. I'm present.
Me too. Also, I'm so happy to be here and for us to officially have this talk. You know, social work is where we met, so let's get to it.
Give us an overview of who you are, how we met, and what made you join the field of social work.
Okay, so my name is Burlette. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. I'm married. To be honest, my passion growing up was always I want to be a teacher, more so working with children. So when I was doing my undergrad, my major was education. While doing that, I did have a part-time job as a school counselor, and I worked with teachers and started to ask questions, building rapport, just to try to figure out like the field that I wanted to get into and what's the backstory on it, what they experienced, what they're going through, and if it's something that I really wanted to do. And coming to find out, while speaking to a lot of teachers, while I was doing my school counseling job, a lot of them did not have education degrees. I'm like, well, how are you a teacher with no education degree? They were like, all you got to do is get certified. You could have a degree in anything that you want to, but as long as you, do the GK knowledge test and a professional test, etc., you can honestly be a teacher, but you can get your degree in anything. So that kind of rang the bell for me. And I was like, you know what if I don't want to be a teacher long term? What if I do want to, switch my major around? So that's when I started to look into different majors, and I saw social work. Social work was very broad. It would still allowed me to work with children. And I was like, okay, well, let me pick up social work. And I'll still pursue education. I'll just get my degree in social work in case I get tired of teaching, long term. Then I'll still have a different degree to fall back on if I wanted a career change. So I did that. When I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I was so excited. I landed my first social work job as a targeted case manager. We didn't do a lot of work. We didn't get in depth with a lot of families. But my first real social work job was actually a case manager. And that's where I met Deandra at my interview. I saw her sitting there in the room, and I was sitting in the room. We didn't really speak, but I saw her. She saw me. We went through the interview process, but I officially met her during our training session. Being a case manager, you got to train for like 3 months because there's a lot that goes into the position and a lot that you need to know when you're actually going out to the homes, to the families, and assessing the children. So training is very in-depth. She sat by me in training class because I was always first. I was on time for work. Matter of fact, I was early for work. So she sat by me in training class, and I don't remember our first conversation, but whatever was said, it was history from there. Like, you're a great friend, professional, personal. We switched jobs. We're still connected. That's my girl. I love her, and half my social work career was with Deandra. And even though we weren't in the same agency, like, we fell back on each other when it came to certain things that we dealt with in the field. She's very knowledgeable. I was very knowledgeable. So like, we will call each other like, hey, I'm dealing with this. What's going on here? What's your take? What's your input? So it was very refreshing to have a friend in my department, in my field, that I was able to call on when I needed like a third eye opinion or a third opinion on something. Yeah, you have your supervisor and stuff, but sometimes you may disagree with management and supervisor. So getting that extra opinion with someone outside of the room kind of helped me in my social work field as well when it came to like helping the families and helping the children.
It's very funny that you talk about your first job, right? So we both worked at Henderson as our first job
It
into
was
social
destined.
services, right?
It was
So you
destined
did
for us
like
to meet.
I think you did children, and I did crisis. I worked with the homeless population and the substance abuse population, but I was only there for like maybe 3 months. And then I went to that interview, and I will never forget that the person who interviewed us, he was like, if you can do this job, you can do anything, right? So I'm like, okay, that's very cliche, right? You know, they're just trying to sell us the job, or they're trying to sell me the job, because at that time I didn't know how the social services field work. If I was going to get the job, you was going to get the job. I didn't realize that it was a pool of us, even though I had interned with the agency prior. So like we both, I feel like our paths are similar because we've both done case management, we've both done investigations, and we have that lived experiences on both sides. I mean, I've done my investigation experience in Miami, and you've done it in Broward. So I know there's a lot of misconception where people feel as if DCF is just one big entity, and it's not. So I want to break down what that is and what that looks like. I know you did case management first, but let's start back to basically like where the case starts from. It starts from the hotline, and then it works our way to the investigations department. So like, what was your experience working in investigations in Broward County?
Whew. Boy, oh boy. It's funny because when I did my undergrad in social work, and I had a slight interest, to be a social worker, even though I knew I wanted to be a teacher. But since I was doing like my program, and then we had to do like different assignments in class, I was like, okay, I could do this. So they did talk about like different positions that we would encounter outside of after we graduate, and they did talk about DCF, child protection investigator, and they talked about case management. So I always told myself, you know what, I would rather be a child protective investigator because it sounds more fun. It's because I really like investigations. I like to get all in people's business. I like to see what's going on. Why are we here? Stuff like that. So when before I became a case manager, I did apply to do CPI multiple times. I got denied. And finally, after a couple of years, DCF did hire me to be a child protective investigator. And whoo! Very interesting. First off, we're known as baby snatchers, not child protective investigators. So when we do go out in the neighborhoods and they see our shirts, and Broward County, we had state cars. They don't really have state cars. They drive their personal cars. But us, luckily, we were granted state cars. So once they see that tag, that yellow tag in their neighborhood, it's like, alert, 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 baby snatcher in the building. It was one time I remember I had an early case. I was on call Sunday morning. I had a case in Pompano, and I had to be out there like 8 o'clock a.m. So what I usually do is we do have to respond with law enforcement for safety reasons, and I honestly now understand, because at first, coming from case management, going to child protective investigator, with case management, when we went into the homes, we didn't call law enforcement. We went into the homes blindsided by ourselves to do our investigations. So going to child protective investigator, when they're like instructing us, oh, you need law enforcement to do the investigations, I'm like, why? I spent like 3 years, going in and out of my family home by myself. Like, why do I need police? But protocol is protocol, so I follow protocol. So in the midst of that, when we do get in the neighborhood waiting for law enforcement, I always usually park like down the block. I never park right directly in front of the house that I'm targeting, or the house that I'm about to do an investigation on. I park down the block, wait for law enforcement. They meet me, we staff the case, and then we drive up. So this one case, I parked down the block, and again, people who are repetitive with receiving investigations, they already know. I was literally down the block, and I was sitting in my car minding my business, and this lady, the lady that I needed to do an investigation on, her house was literally like 5 houses down. She literally walked down the street, the long block, on her phone. She looked at my tag. She said, yep, that's them. And I'm sitting in the car by myself. I'm like, oh, Jesus. She's like, yep, that's them. And then she mind you, and then I rolled down my window. She's like, who are you here for? who are you here for? I said, I'm just hanging out, ma'am. I'm just hanging out. She's like, She's like, yep, that's them. And she was the one that I actually had an investigation on. So it was funny. So basically, she already like pre-prepared herself, and the person we were looking for was already like gone. She already, gave them the heads up. They already left. But I'm rambling. I honestly forgot your question.
Well, no, that like I think so the fact that you've done investigations in Broward and I've done it in Miami, our experiences are totally different, right? So we do pre-commencement. I'm pretty sure you guys do pre-commencement as well, but we don't go out with law enforcement. It's unless they have like a violent offense, or if you feel like your safety is going to be compromised, then you'll contact them and you'll meet them at the home. We do our case. We have like, if it's a 4-hour response time, 24 hours, we're out there. We go there, we knock on the door, and we just go inside of the home. We address the allegations. But like, I feel like Broward was much more structured. You guys had, like you said, the vehicles. Miami did. I mean, I think Miami has vehicles now. I still keep in contact with people from Miami, so I think they have advanced, and now they have vehicles as well. But to me, it used to, or when I used to speak with you, I'm like, it's a blessing and a curse to have law enforcement go out there with you, because you're at the mercy of law enforcement. They respond whenever they feel like it's time to respond, but I won't say whenever they feel like it's time to respond, because they have other calls to do. And then I found out maybe like a month ago or maybe 2 weeks ago that we're considered like non-emergency. So in our world, we don't know what's on the other side of that door. And for law enforcement, that's not a present danger situation for them. They've been staying in the home, so they don't process it as of priority.
Unless it's a removal, but start to cut you off. But I feel like the reason why Broward County enforced law enforcement to pre-commence together with CPIS. CPIS is Child Protective Investigator, is because CPIS was under BSO. So they were under law enforcement initially for many, many, many years. So they worked alongside with the police department. So like that relationship was already there. So when it came to like them doing their cases, like sometimes when we had to wait for law enforcement, we had to wait like 2-3 hours. But when they were under law enforcement, under the BSO, they only waited like 5 minutes, because every like the sheriff, the lieutenant, they were the ones running CPIS. They were the ones in charge of that whole department, which made sense why they wanted their peoples to go out, with CPIS to the homes. And even though the state took over Broward, they still wanted to continue the same process. So for me, for certain cases, yes. Certain cases I felt like we could have went by ourselves, but I did run into some situations and I was like, yeah, should have had law enforcement, So it's a hit or miss, but I see the why Broward, have the whole, you need to commence with law enforcement.
And like law enforcement and social workers, we don't have the same type of training. So I think as social workers, we're more trauma focused. So we're trying to be as least intrusive as possible. Whereas law enforcement, they have to carry that like tough demeanor. So for me, I kind of like during my time of investigations, I didn't mind going out to the home because I felt like the families received you better without law enforcement present. But by all means, when I needed to contact law enforcement, I was there, I was waiting, and sometimes I was waiting like 3-4 hours, because I think, with sexual abuse cases, you have to respond. Well, not I think, but with sexual abuse cases, you have to respond with law enforcement. So you would have to wait. But there are scenarios where, like you said, law enforcement is needed for your safety, because the reality of the situation is, when we go out there, we don't have on bulletproof vests. You're going or you're meeting, and I think that's what people fail to understand. When you're doing investigations, you're really meeting people at their most vulnerable points. So those allegations sometimes are true and sometimes they're not. And I think that's one of the biggest stigmas that we deal with as investigators, right? People think that when you go or you get an investigation, kids are already being removed. However, that's not really the case. Like 90% of the allegations that come into the hotlines are spiteful. They're not true. There's a lot of family court issues going on, parents calling in on each other, neighbors, and even sometimes professionals who don't believe that people are operating how they would operate and deem it as a threat or harm, when in reality it's not that. So we spoke about the investigation piece. What are the biggest stigmas that you've seen associated with the investigation field?
Like you said before, when you said, like, I do agree with you when you said the whole least intrusive stuff with law enforcement, because when CPIs have to do a removal, I have to just touch bases on that. When CPIs have to do a removal, we have to do it with law enforcement. So when you are entering the homes with law enforcement, the parents and the family do shut down because they automatically think, oh, you're here with him, you're gonna remove my baby, rather than you walking alone. It's like, I'm just checking in, I just want to know what's going on here, I just want to have a conversation with you. And then when law enforcement do accommodate you in the investigations, it's like 3 or 4 of them sometimes, and they're all just standing around with guns, like you said. So
Cameras recording. Well, I don't know if the cameras are recording, because we serve a different population, so I don't think they're recording, or I don't know, because we don't know their protocol.
Depends on the city.
Okay.
I've had a case in Plantation where they don't have cameras, so it couldn't record. I've had cases in Sunrise where the officer's like, okay, we're being recorded, and they click the record. So it all depends on the city.
I think one of the biggest things that I want to stress or touch on is that it takes a lot to remove a kid. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to implement services. You have to, like, there's a certain threshold that has to be met before we can say, okay, we're going to do a removal. You have to go and staff with attorneys. I think that families think that the system is designed to work against them, when in reality, the system is here to work for you when you allow it to work for you. Mm-hmm. You have to be open and willing to the service providers, because it's kind of like that saying where you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't force it to drink. Mm-hmm. We can give you all of the services that's humanly possible, but it's up to you to go ahead and engage in those services. Yeah. Like, we have to go before a judge. Before we even get to the judge, we have to do a whole DST staffing where we're on a call with a group of attorneys trying to see if we have enough evidence to even pursue a removal. And before we even get there, you have to, and when you go in front of a judge, they want to make sure that all of your bases have been covered. Safety plans, that you explored any other family members before even considering a dual removal. So it's a lot that goes into the investigative piece that people don't see. They just see the children who has been removed and are now sitting inside of case management.
Correct. And a lot of it too, a lot of kids who are being removed are repetitive cases that we receive. I remember this one case, and honestly, as being a child protective investigator, CPIS, we work hard before we remove a kid, because when you go to court, they want to see what all the services that you put in place. How did you try to help this family? What did you do before we got here? I had this one, it actually wasn't my case, but I kind of helped my coworker with this case. It was a mom. She was with her man, I don't know, many years, and her man was basically beating her butt. The case came in about 3 times. The man was fighting her, beating her, leaving bruises on her face and everything, and they just had like a 6-month-old baby, and she was like crying Bloody Mary, help me. I'm in an abusive relationship. I can't go to work. I can't do this. It was like 3 kids in the home. They lived with the grandma. She said the grandma was harassing her. The grandma was beating on her too. It was just a mess. And I watched my coworker exhaust her options. She put in services in place. She put in therapy. She put in parenting. The last time the case came in, she actually put the mother in a shelter. We actually put her in a hotel room first. We put the mother in a shelter, and before we put the mother in a shelter, we asked her, we looked at her, we said, do you want the help? Do you want the help? She said, yes, I'm being abused. My children are being neglected because of him. I want the help. So we put the mom in a hotel, then we put the mom in a shelter. We went to remove the all 3 children from the dad only, because we put the mom and the children in a shelter. And literally 2 days later, she calls the grandmother, her mom-in-law, to come pick her up, and she went right back.
And then that triggered the removal, right?
Right back. So now we had to remove from her too. At first we removed from dad. Now we had to remove from her. So it's like, it boils down to, it boils down to when we remove children, ultimately it boils down to do the parents really want help? Do the parents really want to change? You know, and a lot of people don't see what CPIs do on the back end, trying to help to prevent a removal. But sometimes some parents don't care. You know, some parents don't care. Some parents want to pick their spouse, their partner, over their children well-being. I've seen a lot.
And I think like you've honed in on a very important part of investigations, the fact that it really does take a lot, and we can do so much, but the parent has to be willing as well to go ahead and do that work. So with investigations, I think when I've spoken to people who've just done investigations, and when I've spoken to people who've done case management, some people don't want to see it to the end. They're like, okay, like, I'm here, we're going to assess to see if there's any danger. If there's no danger, we're going to put some services in place, try to stabilize. If it is, we're going to do a removal. So they don't get to see the end of it. For us, we've been able to see the beginning pieces and the end pieces. So I want to transition into what the case management aspect of child welfare looks like.
With case management, once a child is removed from CPIS, the case is assigned to a case manager. You get assigned the case. You have to do your first initial visit, where sometimes the child is removed and placed with a relative. Sometimes the child is removed and placed in foster care or placed in a group home. It all depends on the availability, or it all depends on family that's willing to help. And honestly, working in this field, family can sometimes be evil. I'm gonna just leave it there. Family can sometimes be evil, because I had times where I had to like beg an aunt to take a niece or nephew in, and I'm like, you would rather this kid be in foster care? Like, you know, so you see a lot in social work. But the child gets removed, the child gets placed either with relatives, in a foster home, in a group home, and as a case manager, you have 24 hours from when you receive the case to go out and to assess that child's new living arrangement. Is a child okay? Was a child placed with clothing? Does the child have clothes, underwear, feminine products or male products? You know, whatever it is, school backpack, uniform, etc. And then as a case manager, we have to figure out, okay, how are you getting to school? So for me, being a case manager, you became that child's mother. I had to make sure, if I received the case and I had that child on my case, I had to make sure that child had everything that he or she needed: food, water, transportation, medical, dental, whatever it was. When I went there initially, I had to assess everything from day one to make sure everything is in place. And if transportation was not in place for that child to go to school, then I became transportation. I had to make sure I woke up at a reasonable time, picked up the child, bring the child to school.
Don't say reasonable. Say say the real time. Like
early.
If school started if the school started at 7 a.m., if they were in high school and they needed transportation, you would have to make arrangements for your child to be somewhere, leaving your home at 5 a.m.
Yep.
to make sure that child in the system makes it to school on time.
Correct.
Even, I mean, it's case management. So investigations is quick, fast, to the point.
In and out.
Case management, these families
Tedious.
get 1 year. And a year may sound long to you or it may sound short. It all depends on perception. But for a case manager, a year is a long time.
Absolutely.
Because you're not just dealing with the family. I mean, you're not just dealing with the parents. You're not just dealing with the children. You're dealing with both. You're tasked with going ahead and making referrals for not just the children, but for the parents as well. Following up with the parents, making sure that these court reports are done. I mean, as a case manager, I feel like everybody reports to you. You said like, you become that child's mother, but you're not just that child's mother, because everybody pulls from you. The guardian ad litem, the foster parents, your supervisors, the individual therapists, everybody who is supposed, I won't say that it's not collaboration, because it is. We all care or wear different hats, but it's a lot as a case manager, because I think the best way to put it, like you said, I don't want to take away from people's parents, because there's some people, we have children that we birthed out naturally, and then we have some that we take on as our own. And as case managers, that's what you do for the children, and then you're that support for the parents.
You're everything as a case manager. You're literally everything. Don't get me wrong. I love, if I would to pick either case management or CPIS, I would probably pick case management, only because I'm able to actually help my family, and I'm not saying that each case was a success story. Of course not, because ultimately it depends on the parent. Like, if you're willing and you want change, then I'm there and I'm going to push you and I'm going to help you get to the change. But not every parent that I had on my caseload was willing for change, but being a case manager, you literally wear every hat. You're Uber, transportation, you're a friend, you're a counselor, a unpaid, unofficial counselor. Because when the mom is going through stress, she calls you. When the mom is missing her child, she calls you. When the child's missing the mom, the child calls you, Or the worst part about case management too, I would say, is visitation time. Can you only imagine bringing a child to visitation, haven't seen mom or dad in about 2 weeks, and mom doesn't show up to the visit? And you have to take that child back to foster care or wherever that child was and try to give that child an explanation on why mommy didn't show up today. And I had that a lot, a lot. And that was very heart aching for me, because I can tell a child so much, but I cannot fill the void that child is missing, and being away from your parent, your home, your family, just like the common area that you it's already tough. And sometimes I had to beg parents, just show up, and as a case manager, where our job is to make it reasonable for the parents, unfortunately, because I'm a mom too, and I had to sacrifice my family, my children, to accommodate my parents and my children on my cases. If a parent was only available at 8 p.m. to have a visit with the child, then I had to accommodate that parent at 8 p.m. Because when we go to court and the judge want an update about visitation, I can't tell the judge, well, I don't work at 8 p.m., so mommy or daddy not seeing the kid. No, that's not an excuse. When you pick up the job as a case manager, when you wear that hat, you have to accommodate by any means necessary when it comes to the mom, the dad, the child, whatever it is. You wear all the hats. So I dealt with many sacrifices, with my personal life, being a case manager, trying to fulfill and trying to reunify and trying to help the families that I had on my cases. And honestly, I'm not going to say I regret it, because I love what I did. I loved the whole reunification part. I loved seeing a parent go from not having a house to having a house, the ones on drugs to being clean, and the ones going to parenting classes and wanting to change and calling me with updates like, Miss B. They would call me Miss B. Miss B, I got a house. Miss B, I got a job. I'm working now, Miss B. I'm going to have to change my visitation. That just warmed my heart, because it was like, okay, I'm doing this job with a purpose. There's an end goal here, and it warms me, especially like I said, when the parent goes from having nothing, being terrible, depressed, to, here, baby, I have a home, I have a bed for you, you can come back home now, and the child just being happy, like, Miss B, I can go home now,
What advice would you have for families that are working with the system right now?
What do you mean working with the system?
Who has an open dependency case, who's working towards reunification, child has already been removed, and now they're at the beginning of their case plan. What advice would you give to that family?
Don't give up. It's hard. Going through a 9-week parenting class is hard, and I just feel like if that's your child, sacrifice. Just like I have to sacrifice sometimes, for certain things I have to do in life, you have to sacrifice. Anything that you want in life, you have to sacrifice. And I understand having a case plan as a parent can be difficult because they kind of set you up with a lot of things to do. Parenting, if you have a substance abuse issue, they give you substance abuse classes, and then they're like, oh, you need therapy because you may be going through XYZ and they want you to do this and that. So it does get tough. I get it. And then on top of that, you have to work. You have to work because you have to have an income to show the judge, like, hey, I have an income, I can take care of my child. So it is tough. But my thing is sacrifice. Don't give up. The service providers, your case manager, they're always willing to help you if you're willing to try. But when you just quit, don't return phone calls, don't pick up the phone, don't show up, that's when we get discouraged to help. Now this is a virtual world, like long time ago you had to go in person to a lot of these classes. Now you can do a lot of things virtually, and there's a lot of facilitators that's willing to accommodate a parent who's willing to who wants to change. And as a case manager, if I'm your case manager and I know like you're trying, you're just not available, and I don't want you to get dropped out from like a parenting class or whatever it is, it's my job to advocate for you. It's like, listen, my parent just got a job. She's working from here to here. We're able to do that for that parent to continue to get the services that he or she may need, but the case manager has to know that you want it. You want it, you're willing to sacrifice, and we're willing to help. But once you get the nonchalant parents who feels like, well, y'all need to figure it out. Y'all took my child, and this is all I got, that's when it becomes a little bit discouraging, because it's like, okay, it kind of scares the case manager, because it's like, okay, you have this nonchalant attitude. When I put this child back in your home, what is that going to look like? Are we going to be here again? So as a case manager, we assess all of those things. We'll assess the conversations. We assess your eagerness, your willingness, you wanting to change, and to be honest, I've dealt with a lot of difficult parents. I've dealt with a parent who met me downstairs by my car to beat my butt, and yeah, it was rough, So
let me ask you a question. Like, what advice would you have for child welfare professionals entering this field who decides that they want to be a dependency case manager? What advice would you give them when interacting with these families?
Patience. Be patient, and you have to have a passion for it. This job is tough, but you have to remember, entering this field, that you're on the clock 24/7. Even though you're at home and you're off the clock, you're technically not off the clock, because things happen. Again, like I said, we wear a lot of hats. That child who's in a foster home he's still under your responsibility technically. So God forbid something's happening in that home, you want your phone available so you can know what's going on and what you need to do to assess, because things happen on these cases, and we hear the horror stories. So coming into this field, you need to be patient. You need to not technically work 24/7, but be available with your phone 24/7, because you want to be as up to date with your cases as possible. Because the worst thing as a case manager is to go to court and not know what's going on with your case. That's the worst thing ever.
The worst. It like damages your credibility.
The worst thing ever.
And I think it's very important to remember that we have to. I know in training it used to sound very cliche, like, oh, meet the family where they're at. But no, it's really true. You have to meet the family where they're at, because everybody's on different paths in life. You're going to get those parents who's eager to get their kids back. And then you're going to get the parents who, it's not that they're not eager to get their kids back. It just may take more time for them to get their kids back. And it takes a big heart to do this job. A lot of social workers don't get in it for the money. Like my mom always used to tell me, I have family members who are social workers. And it was like, why do you want to do child welfare? There's no money in that. And my mom always told me, chase your heart and the money will come. And I think like our field has progressed in so many ways. We sometimes joke about like the salary we started at and where we're at or where social work is at.
So it was kind of great.
It was kind of great, but it's still advanced, right? So like they weren't getting raises that much back then. Now with Governor DeSantis, it may not be the biggest raise, but it is still progress. Like I feel like we're taking more steps forward in the right direction. I really feel like the child welfare system isn't given enough credit because of HIPAA, right? Not because we don't want to. Sometimes it stops at once it makes the headline, oh, DCF was involved and a child passed away. But you don't see that this was once a family that the system helped reunify, that sometimes the onus isn't on the case manager, the onus isn't on the department. We're here to strengthen families and meet them where they're at. Sometimes we do make those tough decisions where, hey, sometimes the case just does have to go TPR and the parents cannot reunify with the children. But then there's times where we reunify, we help strengthen, and you have success rates, right? But the public doesn't see that. They only see the negative because there's not a space for parents to come back and speak about their lived experience. There isn't a place for children to say, hey, I walked that path. This is what it looked like for me, and this is where I'm at now. So I want to thank you so much. Did you want to add something?
Yes, I wanted to add something really quick before we end this, because you said something that really reminded me when it came to like case management. And I'm going to compare case management again to CPIs. Like, in order to effectively help these parents is you have to get to know them. You know, a lot of times with CPIs, what we see on paper is how they go by with helping a family. But it's honestly not always all true. And with case management, when we initially go in with our case, we have to complete a FFAO.
The Family Functioning Assessment.
There you go, that. And completing the FFAO, at first it was very tedious and annoying, but now I get it. Because sometimes their issue don't start where we thought it started. It could be something that they dealt with many years ago, childhood, XYZ, and it's like it's becoming repetitive, it's becoming a pattern. So getting to know your family as a case manager and as being a CPIS investigator is how you're able to effectively help them. But if you just go by paper, the intake and what it says, and you're like, okay, I'm going to put the service in based off what the intake said, that family is going to be a repetitor. They're going to come back again because we're not hitting the root, the issue on what's really going on in that home.
And I think that the state, I don't know, whoever the macro policy makers are, right? I think they did a good job separating investigators and case managers, because an investigator sees the family at the onset of the case. So they've walked in at the most heinous time. They've seen the family sometimes do the most heinous acts, right? And then sometimes it's not true. Sometimes the reports are false, right? But if they've made it to the dependency or the case management aspect of it, the allegations were true, and that's why they're in services. So the fact that investigators aren't tasked with reunifying the family or the children, it gives the family the chance to have a fresh start, because as a child welfare case manager, you didn't have to see the ugly part of it.
Yeah.
You've seen the family when crisis is over, the family stabilized, children are out of the home, parents no longer have the children. So now that's when the true work begins. You have to approach it as a first time basis. Like, this is the first time you've seen this family, whether they've been here many times before. We're past that. DCF made the judgment. Now case management is here to restore and help reunify. So I think the state doesn't get enough credit for that, because it's something that we overlook, but it's very key, because now as two professionals who see the case from different lenses, we have the ability to go ahead and make that change, because the common goal is to keep families together, to make sure these children achieve permanency. We just do it from different aspects and different ways.
I agree.
Because child welfare is a unique field. It has so many different sectors that we just can't cover it all in one setting. So I want to say thank you for being my first guest on the Social Worker
Thank you for having
podcast,
me.
and you will definitely be back because we didn't even touch base with like your law enforcement side that you just now picked up. So I do want to bring you back so that we can unpack that being a social worker looks like from the law enforcement standpoint. That brings us to the end of today's episode of the Social Worker. A huge thank you to Burlette for sharing such powerful insights into the realities of working on the front lines of child welfare. Until next time, protect your peace and keep pushing purpose.
Woo-hoo.